So, good afternoon, adventurers. Today we're going to do something completely different to your usual scheduled synth action. I'm going to talk about autism for a bit. So, I think it's really important to mention that if you've met one autistic person, then you've met one autistic person. We're not all going to have the same experiences and the same opinions and the same feelings about things. But I think that my perspective, the perspective I can offer, firstly, is the perspective of a late diagnosed autistic person. I was diagnosed well into adulthood, not as a child. And secondly, I can offer the perspective of a very, very musical autistic person. Hey, I'm now on Patreon like all the other cool kids. So if you'd like to support the channel, please head there. So I was born in 1982. Music does run in my family. My great-grandmother, Elsie Molyneux, was a quite prolific local silent movie pianist. So she'd be there in the Odeon or wherever, playing melodramatic ditties to whatever was happening on screen. Possibly, some kind of a love riff or someone being tied to a train track. As a child, my main loves were, well, computers. It was the 80s after all. But also, most definitely music. And I remember at the age of around 2 or 3, being able to listen to music and pick out the different instruments. And the first time I can ever remember doing this was to the song YMCA, where I was able to pick out and then successfully sing the bass line, that octave bass line, much to the bemusement of my grandparents, I think. So in terms of my relationship with music, I've always called autism a blessing and a curse. I think in general it's a blessing and a curse. I've said that for years. There's very, very positive elements to the condition, but incredible difficulties and challenges. So, using a vintage piece of Amiga software called Flowcharter, I thought we'd start with the positives, then go into some of the difficulties and challenges, and then finally hear off some of my friends and family. Some of them have recorded video for me, some of them have written paragraphs, and I haven't seen any of them. So it could get quite emotional. So my first positive is, as an autistic person with a trained ear, I can really hear the beauty in the world. I can hear music very easily as separate, beautiful cascading layers, which is incredibly useful for rearranging songs. And what's also interesting is that the music doesn't actually have to be there. I've got like this photographic memory for different parts of songs, and also a complete kind of working composition factory just in my brain. Sometimes I've been known to dance around to music that just isn't there. So building from this, the next positive is that I can pretty much play anything that I want to with not much effort. Most pop songs, I can hear them once and replicate them on my instruments, which are mainly piano, guitar. I also play the drums. And I think that learning to replicate music, not just the notes, but perhaps the timbre and production as well, allows me to be very compositionally strong. I can really ape a lot of styles and genres. And I think that's one of the things that Zach likes about my work in Arcade Dreams. The documentary covers 100 years of arcade games, and I'm able to, do 100 years worth of genres if needed to go along with the images. One really, really warm thought that I think to myself sometimes is that I can walk up to any piano in the world as long as it's unlocked and as long as it's not prepared with rubbers and nails and stuff, and just play it. Recently, at one of the National Trust sites, they have a piano that members of the public can play. And I sat down, I played a couple of numbers, and people appreciate it, they clap. My wife was mortified. She was sat with baby Fen on one of the sofas, like not making eye contact with anyone, because it was so embarrassing, apparently. I mean, I was playing well, so I don't know what was embarrassing, but there we go. I think that when this chart is finished, some of the good points of autism might render the bad points less harmful. And one such point is mindfulness. No, I don't just mean meditation. Meditation is great for all sorts of mental health issues. I'm talking about the kind of being in the present moment, concentrating very much on the task at hand. And that's something, that kind of hyper focus is something I can do with music and get completely lost in the creative process. And I think having that creative outlet is completely essential for many people in life. It's something that in the day center I help run, we really offer people opportunities to be creative, either with like art lessons or music lessons or gardening or something, because it does have such a positive impact on your emotional well-being. Autistic people have special interests, and I find that my sort of cluster of interests, vintage computers, synthesizers, some other stuff I can't mention, have remained with me throughout most of my life. Now, of course, with these skills I've got, I can teach other people, and it's something that I've done a lot of throughout my life. So I once had a client who had perhaps more severe learning disability needs, and also a lack of dexterity in order to, fluidly play the guitar. However, he did have enough grip to kind of just hold one note and move that one note around. Not particularly quickly, but he could move it around a little. So I used to set up backing tracks in certain keys, and then he'd be able to, alongside a couple of other service users and me, play as part of an ensemble. That really gave him such a better quality of life, being able to contribute something creative. Silliness. Never underestimate the musical importance of silliness. Me and Rebecca will make up such stupid, silly songs, just little in-jokes. And occasionally I've taken them, to quite an advanced point. Finally, my musical gift, if you want to call it that, closens my friendships. We really share a very, very special bond. I hope they appreciate it as much as I do. We'll see. So, the crappy stuff. Misophonia. Nothing to do with soup. Misophonia is essentially a strong negative reaction to certain sound triggers. And I put a post about it on Facebook the other day. I have a bit of an issue with dance music. The experiences I had in places that played dance music in the 90s were bad, essentially. So a few people have commented. Paul Usher said, House of God at the Dance Factory and Q Club in Birmingham were incredibly diverse. Goths, punks, crusties, and a plethora of flamboyant people all having a wonderful shared experience. Maybe if I'd have had that experience instead, dance music would have endeared itself to me, but it just hasn't, unfortunately. Trauma. Now, this is the big one, really. Autism. Unfortunately, the condition doesn't exist without trauma, because autistic people have to live in this world where they are a minority. So we're really powerless and to a degree at the mercy of the non-autistic or allistic population. And unfortunately, I found, certainly growing up, that many people treated me in a very cruel way. Primary school was okay. My play pattern with other children tended to be to make up imaginary games for the other kids to play and then direct them like they were my actors. That's an incredibly autistic way of playing with other children. But like all British children, it was soon time for secondary school. I have to basically get the point across that there was not one part of me, not one single iota part of me that was not in some way criticized or the source of a joke. And some of my behavior was inappropriate, you know, like making up stories that I was visited by aliens to try and impress other children. My wife says that that would have impressed her if she'd have known me as a child. Physical appearance was, you know, constantly criticized. The way I moved, the things I said. There were some very clever bullies who would play very devious games to try and make me humiliate myself. I'd go to someone's house party and then another kid would offer me some whiskey, and it turned out it wasn't whiskey, he'd just pissed in the bottle and then told everyone that I drank piss. I don't think it was ever as much physical bullying. There was a bit of sexual abuse, but it wasn't get beat up kind of cliches. It was all a lot more clever and devious than that. One of the other issues, one of the major issues, is that it wasn't just the bullying. On top of it all, and the worst part, was the out of stepness, so not knowing how to act or what to do or what to say, you know. I remember completely outrageous acts of bullying where a very angry young woman dragged me by the hair across the dance floor. So I guess there was some physical bullying then. But that doesn't bother me nearly as much as some of the failures I had myself at either not being able to instigate a relationship with someone when, everyone else was seemingly doing much better at that. There's an issue over how boys are socialized, in a sense. They're a bit braggy. They're like, I've done it with 10 girls. I've done it with 15 girls. It makes you feel kind of inferior if you haven't had any experiences like that. So feeling out of step with the world was a huge one. And I've had to pay a lot of money for therapy, thousands and thousands of pounds. It's taken me a long time to come to terms with me as a slightly awkward, introverted, autistic person who finds things difficult, and not as someone else I might have wanted to be. So with that trauma, there comes some kind of form of entitlement, thinking I deserve XX. The thing that I keep on trying to battle against is I've had it so hard. I've had it so much harder than everybody else. Obviously not everybody else in the world, but everyone around me, shall we say, for most of my life. And it's something that you just naturally fall into. It's not something that anyone decides to want to feel. I mean, my musical career is just now starting to have some kind of slight bloom at the age of 40. The lack of validation I had for years with these, in my head, world-class, incredible skills hurt. Emotions can be really potent with autism. Things like rumination, So those feelings like lack of validation can be really, really, really potent. One thing that's really I've never quite got to the bottom of is that I'm simultaneously very confident yet kind of full of self-doubt. It's a bizarre ego, it's a bizarre mix where I'm very confident, but I'm very guarded and incredibly scared of rejection. I think to myself, hey, I'm amazing, but they won't see it. And now, I've just started at 39, 40 to have someone who helped me. Because for years and years, I was just, working away without guidance, doing live gigs, mainly as support acts for bigger national acts who were coming through Birmingham, and just trying to work away at that, which was such a constant slog. Just getting numbers, getting tickets, selling tickets, going places. It was so far out of my comfort zone, going to events and selling tickets. With all of these feelings of self-doubt and rejection and everything. It was just impossible, but I did it a lot of times. But it didn't really pay off that much. The worst thing for me currently in life is jealousy/envy of others' success. I was concerned about making this video because I would not be liked anymore for admitting the truth. Hopefully I've shown that, firstly, I'm not doing the thing I'm about to say on purpose. That's really super important to say. And I'm also hoping that as you listen, you can think about the amount of trauma that I've been through, because I've not even scratched the surface in telling you the thousands of different pieces of trauma that make up my life, Being undiagnosed and then falling into poor mental health, that's been the story of my life so far, and it's been awful and it's been terrible. And there are no good old days as I see it. But essentially, I am so jealous and envious of other people's success. I see a lot of people who aren't as talented as me and haven't been through as bad a time as me. And the natural reaction, my natural reaction, is to go, that's not fair. And the life isn't fair lesson that adults try and teach when you're a kid doesn't really cut it. It really just doesn't cut it. So life isn't fair. What do you do with those feelings of envy and jealousy? I don't like seeing other people being successful and having a good time. My brain is like, where's mine? I've been through hell, where's mine? And it makes life very difficult because I like to think I'm a nice, fair, friendly person. I don't actually want to stop anyone else from doing what they love, but there is part of me that just thinks everyone else should get to the back of the line. I've had an absolute hell of a life. Get to the back of the line because I deserve more. And that's how I felt for years and years and years. And it's only started to change, obviously, with therapy. I try and manage that down. That very ugly emotion, I try and manage it down. But secondly, it's changed a bit because I have had some recognition. And that's a really difficult thing to pass because we're supposed to in mental health say, oh, you know, if you're unwell and seeking validation, you shouldn't get the validation. That's not going to do anything. But actually, it does to a degree. I'm incredibly grateful to people like Nick and Zach for giving me chances to do things and use my music and not be, you know, a tortured, withering away artist in obscurity. Has kind of helped me feel less jealous. It's not likable. It's a really unlikable emotion. And it's part of myself that I don't really accept or love yet. And that's going to be the challenge. My next challenge, 3 or 4 years ago, when I was feeling really, really low about this stuff, I considered writing to successful people, YouTubers perhaps, or successful musicians, or both. Probably some people that I'm now friends with, and I thought about writing to them, please stop. Stop doing your videos or your music or whatever. You are actually killing me. Stop doing it, please. You are making me so jealous. Just stop, please. And it's not something that will endear you to people. But that was the level. That's what I'm working with. This is what I'm working with. This depth of emotion is what I'm working with. Due to, essentially, the feeling that the entire world failed me as a child. It was no one's fault that this wasn't caught. So what do I do with all the emotion, the fact that I was failed by everything and everyone, but it wasn't really their fault? It doesn't really give you any closure ever, and you just have to kind of dance around it. I definitely did blame various people for a while. You know, before I had a bunch of the therapy, it was like I had this death ray, right? And I could either point it at other people or I could point it at myself, but it couldn't be switched off. It couldn't be switched off, so I blamed my family, I blamed other people in my life. I blamed myself a lot. And it was, just blame, blame, blame. And essentially, you have to kind of try and dissipate that. I think part of that, and I think more people should try to do this, is working with other people who have been through terrible things. Because it gets rid of the I'm the only one syndrome, or I've had the hardest life syndrome. And sometimes people use I've had the hardest life syndrome to try and deny that other groups of people need support, because they think, well, why does that group need support? I've had the hardest life. Me. It's something you just have to wrestle with for years and years and years and years. And I am wrestling with it. Not being a consumer. So this jealousy aspect is very difficult, and I feel a bit dirty if I consume without creating. It's very odd. But for instance, I see people, family members, friends, get excited to go to gigs, and I don't go to other people's gigs generally, because I just feel like nothing. They're the person up on the stage, they're everything, they're the entertainment. Who am I? I'm nothing. So I don't go to live gigs. Those feelings of envy, of jealousy are so strong still. Even though I've worked them down and cajoled them down, I'm putting my hands up and saying, I'm Paul Beau, I'm a jealous little bitch. Maybe some of you are also jealous people, but don't feel that you can admit that, envy is a sin. It's looked down upon, but it's a natural emotion. Social skills, of course, are something that I've struggled with massively over my life. So I started off shy in childhood. Now, of course, being shy isn't very conducive to getting some kind of music recording contract or some opportunity. I changed to, because of the trauma, pretty personality disorder-ish and off the rails in my 20s, and quite a handful. And that, again, doesn't lend itself to being a team player and getting an opportunity, I found that, I didn't endear myself to people because I was so unwell. Yeah, it's literally just at the age of 40 that I feel balanced enough in order to seek out opportunities and get opportunities. It's very much the ugly duckling / late bloomer thing. And it's kind of painful, when you see people who look like the finished article in their 20s. And then finally, and what I think is another problem, is that autistic people can be overly self-sufficient, whether it's through trauma or whether it's through mistrust or feeling like a loner. What I did was learn pretty much all of the musical skills. So I learned instrumental skills, arranging. I learned composition for orchestra. I learned mixing, mastering. I learned all of these skills. Now, no one in the industry is going to want to work with someone that can replace 30 people. Because the guy who just does the bassoon will want to just do the bassoon. And the girl who just does the mastering is going to want to do the mastering. So essentially, I isolated myself to a degree more. Perhaps society isolated me a lot up until the age of 20-ish. But then at 20, because I was used to that, I isolated myself more. And have only just, within the last couple of years, learnt about collaboration. And actually had the kind of spirit of compromise and the dialing down of being a total control freak. Because there are kind of OCD elements to autism as well, and black and white thinking, and it can be really difficult to work with others. So that over self-sufficiency has literally just started to lift, and I'm collaborating with other people. Sometimes people who are like, actually, we like this idea, but we don't like your idea here. Can you do this instead? And I'm like, you don't like my idea here. But I've got to kind of graciously accept that, and and work with them. I'm sounding really, really unlikable in this video. I hope that my humanity can shine through, and that you can understand why I've ended up with a few rough edges that I still need to work on. And it might be useful. Other people might think, actually, there's a bit of me in that. So, family and friends. So this first one's from Zachary, who is the director extraordinaire of Arcade Dreams. He says his office looks like total shit, so just watch out for that. Let's see if his office does look like total shit.
Hey there, I'm Zach Weddington. I'm a director, producer, film and television. I've been working on a series called Arcade Dreams with Polly. You can check it out at arcadedocumentary.com. A couple years back, we hired Polly to be our soundtrack producer. And so Polly reached out to me recently and asked, would I say a few words about what it was like working with them, and also just my thoughts on autism and how that relates to the creative process, including working with Polly on that. So, the things I know, first of all, about autistic people, they tend to be very detail oriented, right? So, there's a lot of subtle changes that Polly has been requested to make in the soundtrack, and some very specific needs, in terms of musical styles that we asked for. And Polly has, done the research, and, I can tell, listen to, different pieces of music to get the inspiration and style, right, for the soundtrack songs we need. And so it's been so cool to, hear these ideas and different wild fantasies of what kind of songs we could get come to life, right? So number two, they tend to be very sensitive people, and so there's a lot of nuance that goes into filmmaking, and audio music production, that I think that a lot of people just don't have, and it does seem that autistic people have that kind of sensitivity, which enables them to understand and interpret things and recreate them, right? So, that's been, I think, a real benefit, to the soundtrack. And then number three, I think just the obsessiveness, that autistic people tend to have, if you know anything about them, man, they get into something and just, they go crazy on it as long as they can, because they have so much fun at it. And this whole time, Polly has just been, by our side and ready to work whenever we had, some new stuff to work on. So, I'm really been thankful to work with them, and I can't wait for everybody to see the documentary. Go to arcadedocumentary.com, and you can sign up for email list. Go check out our social media. We'll be releasing a lot more videos soon, that feature Poly's music as teasers. You'll hear their soundtrack in the final series, and check out the trailer while you're there. Anyway, thanks, and happy to have been a part of this with you, Poly. Take care.
Clearly an upgrade in camera and footage compared to mine. But it's been great working with Zach and the rest of the team. I think he's got it spot on. The sensitivity, most definitely. The obsessiveness is definitely a key factor too. So, when we're doing something, we're gonna go all in. Thank you so much, Zach. This next one is my friend Wayne. Wayne's an interesting character. He lives in Blythe. He fixes old TVs and CRTs and things like that. And we have a shared appreciation of old technology, and I'm going to get him on the channel a bit more in the future because he has a wicked sense of humour. But this is Wayne.
Hello, darlings. Mega Wayne D here, and I must apologise because I'm waiting for a dental appointment, and somebody is using the world's loudest leaf blower just literally a few metres in front of me. So there we go. Anyway, Paulie. What can we say about Paulie and their relationship with music? Well, the thing is, I know a lot of people. I know a lot of musicians, and have known a lot of musicians over the years. And I have to say, I don't think I've ever known anyone who has quite the unique style, and that Paulie has. Not just. It's really difficult to describe.
Have a go. Go on.
Paulie basically does their own thing, and it's quite amazing. I've known many musicians who've got sort of massive egos and yet are completely crap. Yet Paulie's like the opposite. They've got this amazing talent, yet those I don't think I'm that good, and
Do I?
For God's sake, Paulie, you're blooming awesome, right? Okay. Seriously,
Called him.
I love your music. It's for those anybody who watches my my TV repair channels or my any of my TV repair videos won't have failed to realise that I tend to use Paulie's videos of Paulie's music towards the end of quite a few of them. Even Paulie as a brand, it's like this amazing kind of this. I don't know. The trouble is, Paulie does their own thing. One thing somebody who was watching one of my videos, a friend who I've actually been trying to repair an Austin Allegro for, of all things, but it's gone very badly recently. Who actually likes the Black's original version of A Wonderful Life. Heard Paulie's version, and they were kind of like, wow, this is just a whole different level. It's like it's added an extra dimension to a song that they already liked. And they were like, crazy, you know them? And it's like, yeah, that's spent a weekend with them at Norwich LL, so yes. So yeah, I'm really blabbering on here, mainly because I don't really want to go to the dentist, but I have to, and also I'm struggling to really think of how to accurately describe Paulie, because you can't really. Paulie is Paulie, mysterious, yet very Amiga like as well. Put it this way, I thought I was an Amiga geek until I met Paulie. But yeah, and I also thought I really really knew a fair amount of about electronic music Not that I'm saying I'm a musician or anything, but just my understanding of music. And then I met Paulie, and it's like, oh my god, I know very little. So yeah, I think to sum up, I don't think you can sum up Paulie in sort of like one or two words. Without I certainly don't think it does Paulie any justice to sort of like try and condense it into a word. But let's think. Unique. Awesome, because I seem to use this a lot with Paulie, and just I suppose it's interesting because let's face it, you've got people like Ed Sheeran who are like sort of millionaire selling all these music, and it's like, what sort of music is that? And then you listen to Paulie, and it's like, wow, it's like some of the music, particularly the bleak wave stuff, which they've fairly recently started doing, is just it's just mind blowing, really. And you probably couldn't imagine a commercial radio station playing that while they're playing Coldplay and Ed Sheeran and Rita Ora and all this stuff. So yeah. So there you go, Paulie. You are awesome. Deal with that.
Thanks, Wayne. I guess uniqueness is something that I've kind of strived for a long time. I've got a massive like melting pot in my head, where all these influences live, like Peter Gabriel, 9 Inch Nails, Ella Fitzgerald randomly, I really like. And they all kind of get muddled up together, and out comes Paulie, basically. But yeah, please check out Wayne's channel if you enjoy geeky things like CRTs and stuff like that. So I also asked my mum, to write something.
I remember from the very first moment as an 11-year-old when you discovered keyboards, how life-changing it was for you. During all the hard, sad, troubled times of senior school, music became your life. It became your rock to fight against the bullying, the insults, and the trauma that is still there today. As your mum, I can hand on heart say that music saved you. I am so immensely proud of you for always being you, for always fighting on. Music is your passion, and you are so very talented. Loving you always, Mum.
Sure, I think I've talked quite a bit about trauma already, but yes, it was definitely a focus. It was a focus during a difficult time. I also think this is probably a very sad thing, that it was the time I got the best response. Showing that talent seemed to make me slightly more likable. So this one's from Dave. This is my bro. He's obviously had to put up with me for quite some time, being my little brother, my kid brother.
Having had early exposure, I've seen an evolving, eclectic twist and turn in different music genres and styles over the years. Starting with soulful and Motown vibes on car journeys with grandparents, entering into the rockingest, rock-steady beat of madness, which then turned into a shared love of ska punk. I remember crowd surfing at the Carlin Academy. Throughout that earlier time, Paulie's abilities and gifts, I'm making you sound like a main character in a horror film, came through, and I've memories of watching you perform at a recital with other youngsters. However, they were carefully reading music, and you were playing from memory whilst not looking at what you were doing. Quite a sight. The evolving, changing mix of music continued, and I think at one point there was probably at least some form of every genre of music played. I have to say I very much have highlights of the early Elmo days, going to various venues through Brum. So many good memories, and Go Down is still my favorite. I'll leave it there, but can definitely add so much more.
I tend to focus on the failings of those days, being a young person gigging, because it didn't ever lead to something massive. But perhaps someday I'll be able to look back on it more as something life affirming that young people do. Start a band and, try and take on the world. It is tricky, it is difficult when you feel like you haven't succeeded at something. Now, everyone in Birmingham knows at least 2 or 3 Daves. So I have another Dave here. This is my friend David Douglas from the YouTube channel Rose Tinted Spectrum. He's a super intelligent, funny guy. He didn't pay me to say that. So I've enjoyed working with him.
I've often said that when someone truly knows an instrument, it becomes an extension of their body, a sort of effortless connection between brain and object. Paulie's connection with that object, however, isn't just that object. Paulie chose the route of instruments that are wide-reaching, vast, electronic future devices that can chop and change and be experimented with at will, and yet still that connection, between person and instrument, remains. Paulie, much like their weapon of choice, is eclectic. Depending on mood, there's an ability to switch the weapon at will, to tweak it, to work around it, to fashion something new from a standard, and that is very much Paulie. One day, they could be playing a piano, the next, they could be playing a toilet brush hooked up to a lamp, powered by a lemon. And still that connection would be there because Paulie is basically the instrument they choose at any given time.
I think with a lot of these things I've really felt seen. With the eclecticness and the uniqueness, I can kind of have a go at most instruments and get something musical out of them. Apart from the trumpet, oh my goodness, do not give me a trumpet. Ever. Bad idea. We've got 2 more. This is Rebecca, my wife. Let's see what she's got to say.
Paul's relationship to music is necessary and vital to their well-being, to their existence really. Music time is an escape, a place of peace, a tool to simply be and to be lost in a different world, a space to recharge. Paul hears every sound that makes up a song. I know this because they often ask me if I can hear certain parts in the background. I can't, but it has made my appreciation and understanding of music a whole new experience. Paul knows exactly what sounds, notes and tunes make up my favorite music, and can find songs I'll definitely like, which has been amazing to have another person understand and know my own likes and dislikes so well. We all get to benefit from the results of this time and from Paul's gift. We joke that I'm no longer impressed by Paul being able to play any tune from sound. Yeah, it's been 14 years of this trick now, but the truth is that their musical gift still catches me off guard, and will always continue to impress.
I think that's really lovely. We do joke about the fact that she's just used to all this musicality. I like the feeling that other people can benefit from my musicality, Next, we've got my good friend Nadie, who also wrote something.
I feel like the only way I can describe Paulie's relationship with music is that it's like a fish's relationship to water. I am frequently in literal awe of how intuitive and effortless it seems to them, as natural as breathing. Listening to them talk about it, or sharing songs I love for them to listen to, always shows me new facets of music I already love. I am so grateful for the role music plays in our friendship, and the closeness I feel when we sing and play together is such a beautiful gift. Thank you for sharing it with me, sweet gentle pal.
That's really lovely. We work together at the day centre, so there's always chances to be musical, at lunch break or at the end of the day. And it's what I've talked about earlier. It's like it can bring a closeness to relationships, I find. So I want to thank all of my friends and family there for, sharing their feelings on my musical journey. You've heard the good stuff, you've heard the bad stuff. Some of it kind of cancels one another out. Some of it doesn't. I will say that life can still be immensely challenging for me. Obviously, it's incredibly difficult because our society is so success obsessed. You know, there's so many things on which society is unhealthy. It's the kind of old cliche, I'm not crazy, it's everybody else. So, life as a musician with autism, challenging, positives, negatives. You just have to really try and focus on the positives and maximize them. So I hope that's been an interesting insight. If you have autism, leave me a comment below on how you feel about any of the things I've brought up. If you've learned something, I'd love to hear about it. And yes, after this, I'm going to get back to some regular scheduled synthesizer goodness. So thanks everybody for watching, and see you next time. Bye.